Hello everyone, welcome to your fourth unit. This unit is not in your book. This is a separate unit that I am creating myself. However, it is a part of your course structure, hence the name of the course is Writing and Research. So I am going to give you a short unit on research methods. The next unit and the last unit for this course will be argumentative essays. By now you've completed process analysis, which is a very basic form of essays, and then also cause and effect. And we'll move into argumentative. In order for you to have a strong argument, you have to include research. You have to back it up. So this is why this unit is necessary. Also, you have to be able to do citations, to cite your sources. Some of you may already have that experience, so this will be maybe just some practice and review for you. Great, then you will do just fine. Some of you have never cited sources at all. This is new to you. I think that's actually the majority of you. So you have to. When you're writing essays, when you're doing written work, you have to cite sources. You've been able to do essays without doing that, and that's just for practice. But in future courses, you will never be allowed to submit an essay without doing research and without citing your sources. It's considered unacceptable. It can also be considered plagiarism. Even if those are your own words and thoughts, for an academic essay, you should do research. Okay, and now I'll explain a little bit more about why you have to do research. It's something that you must do. On the next slide, I'm going to explain some details of one of my Facebook posts, and then we'll move on into some other updates and the lesson. I realize that I post a lot on Facebook. However, this is my main form of communication with you, and for you guys, the best form of communication. So it's better that I'm communicating with you than not. This Facebook post was posted today as I'm recording this the same day. Some of you have been complaining either maybe to each other or maybe to the chair, maybe also to me, about pre-recorded lessons. This is not for my benefit. This is for your benefit. This is not because I want to be lazy or I don't want to deal with it. On the contrary, it takes a lot of time to record lessons and then upload them in 3 places. So some of you who want live lessons, remember that, everyone has different language ability, English language ability in our classes. Some students cannot keep up in the actual class. So this is actually quite nice because you can pause the video, you can take your time and listen. I understand that you cannot ask questions in real time. So that is why I'm now incorporating the live sessions. But the nature of the student culture that I've witnessed is that there's a lot of questions that are asked that have already been answered. If you would just review the lesson and listen, most of the time I've already answered your questions. Either you weren't listening, you weren't paying attention, or you're not understanding maybe what I'm saying because of a language barrier, for whatever reason, or you're just not sure, so you just keep asking the same questions. Well, if you review the lesson and understand it, then you won't have as many questions later. And I've noticed that there's not a whole lot of questions, or you're just not asking me, and then I have no idea that you're lost. So this is why I'm going to do these Zoom sessions. But can you imagine a class or a couple of classes with all of you in it online, just listening to me talk, and then maybe I'll answer a few of your questions, and that's it. If those are our classes, you would have no sources to look back to. You couldn't really, you can take notes, of course, but like I said, with this kind of class, it's not the best method. language ability and the fact that you need to stop and take notes. I'm not just going to lecture at you. In an actual classroom, it'd be different, and we would do interactive work, but we don't have that luxury right now. So this is why I'm doing pre-recorded lessons. You have something to refer back to. So please stop complaining. I am adding in these Zoom sessions so that if you have questions, you can ask me in real time, but you have to review these lessons before you come to these Zoom sessions. Don't come to the Zoom session and just think that miraculously I'm going to explain everything all over again and you're going to get it. You have to do your part. Some of you are also complaining, I hear through the grapevine, but you're not doing the lessons. Like I can tell who's staying active and who maybe isn't, okay? And I could be wrong about some of you, but there are some of you who are just not doing it. Maybe because you just don't want to. Maybe you're just, unmotivated at this point, which, I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe some of you are just lost. Well, if you don't tell me, then I don't know. And some of you have technical issues, and then you tell me about them weeks later. It's really frustrating for me too, because I could have probably helped you before, or, not taken off points from your assignments or whatever. Don't tell me after the fact, tell me before, so some of you are not communicating with me, and then all of a sudden I get a message from you or an email, with you panicking and complaining, and it's like, we could have solved this problem before. And then when final grades are posted, some of you may not like them because, it is what it is. I'm going to be as transparent as possible about your grades, but, and I don't think some of you need to panic. The ones who need to be worried are the ones who aren't doing what they're supposed to do from the beginning until now. You know who you are. There's no mistake about that. So if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, then don't expect a great grade and then complain about it later. I'm not listening to it. Whatever your grade is, that's your grade. That's it. I'm sorry. You have the option now, according to Annotated, to pass fail. So you can do that if you like. But for those of you that are really invested in the course and always paying attention and joining the sessions and always trying to figure something out and helping each other, I noticed that. Good for you, and you are the students who I dedicate my time to. For the others of you, sorry, no one is responsible for your failure but you. Like I said, we'll do another Zoom session. So what I'd like you to do during this entire lesson, yes, take notes. Obviously, you should take notes anyway, but I'd like for you to write down your questions. Possibly your question will be answered as you go further in the lesson. Possibly your question will be answered in the second lesson for this unit, when I'm actually going to record my screen and show you how I would do some of the research. So I'll probably answer some of your questions in those two lessons. If I don't, then keep those questions and ask me during the Zoom session. The Zoom session will be Thursday, April 9th. You'll have two options this time, 4:30 p.m. in your time zone and 5:30 p.m. in your time zone. I will also repeat this information at the end of this lesson. I'm still going through your essays. There's a lot of them, and I'm giving general feedback soon. I'm updating your participation grades and other grades, and also we'll get to your cause and effect assignment. Just be patient. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with our lesson. So first and foremost, why must we conduct research? Now, I changed the unit name from research methodology to research methods. And that's because research methodology can be its own course. It is very complicated, I would say, and complex. But it's necessary. Research methodology teaches you how to actually research. And what I mean by that is to help you create your research topic and your research questions, also to help you find the relationship between what you are researching and what are your findings. It teaches you about rhetoric, all these different methods. So that really is going to be important for you, doing your senior projects. Because you're not at that stage at this point, writing and research is more so of an introductory course. And for the sake of time, I'm going to switch it to research methods. So I'm just going to basically cover some basics of why we should research, what you should do to start your research for just basic research, and then also how to do citations, how to properly cite your sources internally, and then also doing a works cited page or bibliography or whatever. So that's what we're going to do. For most of you, like I said earlier, this is completely new to you, so you're going to benefit no matter what. Now, I want you to remember that all theses, which is just a plural word for thesis statement, theses. So all theses are opinions, right? So when you have an opinion, that's great. But when you are writing for a broader audience, when you are really trying to prove your point, you have to prove your opinion. Sorry, that was my printer in the background. So you have to prove your opinion. Well, how do you do this? You have to conduct research. Okay, so why do we research? Well, we have to use research in order to explore different topics and also explore different issues. We use research to solve problems. We also use research to call to action. An example of call to action would be what you're going to do soon, an argumentative essay. Could also be a persuasive essay in which we want an outside source to do something about something. Okay? So research is very important. Now, we know there are different types of research, and I won't get into a whole lot of types and names and categories, because I really want you to focus on developing the skill set of what to do in order to do research, okay? So scientists, they have their surveys, they have their lab tests, they have trials. People who are social scientists also do surveys and so on and so forth. We have experts in the field that have extensively, studied different topics. They've done a lot of research. They've done a lot of different, I guess I'm using the word a lot of different trials and tests. And then there's you, the college student, okay? You are not at the stage in your study nor your career to be writing an essay without any sources and saying that this is quality material. I'm going to be quite frank with you. No, it's not, because you haven't done any research. If you don't have any citations, if you don't have research, your paper is nothing. Like my professors used to tell me when I first started in college, no one cares about your opinion as a college student. You're not an expert in your field. You don't have maybe a job in your field. Who are you, right? That's very important. I know it sounds quite rude, but hey, that's academia. Who are you, okay? As a college student, you're just learning. You're just in the infancy. You're just like a baby in the field, okay? No one cares about your opinion. So you have to prove it, especially prove it. Even experts use research. They have to, okay? They have to conduct research and they have to cite it within their essays. So do you, okay? So your essays at this point, whatever you've written, it has no value because it has no research. And if you have done research, good for you. I don't think any of you, maybe one person might have cited some sources, maybe, okay? Most of you have not. So what does that mean? Well, it's time for us to advance. It's time for you to get better, right? So your readers won't take you seriously unless you have something to back up what you're saying. You have to explain your evidence well, of course, but first and foremost, you need to have evidence. So this is why we must conduct research. And from this stage on, even though we will only do one more essay with each other, you always must remember to do research and to cite sources for every single essay that you write in the future for future classes. It's not just about my class. I'm preparing you for future classes. I'm preparing you for future research and jobs in your field. You have to cite sources. Even me as a professional, as a teacher, I still have to cite sources as well. All right, let's move on. The method of research has changed. So let me talk about 2 stages. All right, and these 2 stages are before the internet, pre-internet, and post the internet, after the internet. I have the privilege of being able to tell you about it because I'm not as old as you think. I grew up with internet, and I have seen the progression of how we have, used the internet, how it has improved, and what does that mean for research methods. Now, before the internet, what people had to do for research was quite extensive. We had to actually go to the library. We had to use certain methods that, we learned in school, how to use databases in order to find the books that we needed. And we had to physically go to that aisle and find those books. Then we had to read all of the books. There were no summaries. You could not go to sparknotes.com or find something online and find a summary. That wasn't there, unless you were lucky enough to maybe find a professor or someone who wrote a summary and could hand it to you. Sure, otherwise we didn't have that ability. We also used a lot of first-hand accounts. We did our own research as well, and that goes into primary sources, which I'll get into in a moment. So then the internet came and changed everything. When the internet first started out, there was not a lot of information on there. But what we did start to find out was that, this is going to cause a problem. Anybody can post on the internet. And then years later, it seems that everybody has posted something on the internet. Now, that caused a problem. I mean, obviously, we know the benefits of the internet with research. Now it takes less time. None of you, not even me, we don't have any excuse not to do research. All we have to do is go to Google to start our research if we want to, type in a few words, and we can get some kind of source. We can go to YouTube and do the same thing, okay? Easy. But there's some problems. And that problem is credibility, our credibility and reliability of your sources. A good example of that is Wikipedia, okay? You shouldn't use Wikipedia as a cited source because anybody can post on Wikipedia, and we don't know. Are you an expert in your field? How do I know that what you're writing about is actually true? Where are your sources? They don't have to post sources. It could be copy and paste. It could be plagiarized. So that's the problem that the internet posed with research. And so research methods have changed now because now you have to be able to determine, is this person credible? Is this source credible? Can I rely on it? Is it true? Is this person actually an expert in his or her field? What experience does this person have to be able to write about this topic? And why should I use this information? So now, you have to be able to figure that out. And there's different, ways to determine this as well. Now, pre-internet, people didn't really have to worry about that too much doing research because in order for you to publish before the internet, people had to go through many different trials and panels in order just to get something published. So everything was reviewed by peers and experts. Publishing companies, had to look at it for, false information and fallacies and generalizations, all these different concepts. You couldn't publish it. You couldn't publish crap, pretty much. So we knew those sources were credible. If you were able to publish a book or publish anything, it was credible. Now, that's not the case. So be careful when doing research, because you need to make sure it's credible and reliable. Then we have two different types of sources for research. We have primary sources. Primary is exactly that, first-hand account. That means that you, as the researcher, are actually doing the research itself. Maybe you are the scientist in the laboratory. Maybe you are the psychologist interviewing different patients. Maybe you are the business person doing a survey for your target audience about a product that you want to create. Okay, that's a primary source. You are actually going out there and doing the research yourself, and then taking whatever information that you've gathered and then explaining that and analyzing that and writing what you need to do. And my students in English for the English in the workplace last semester actually did that. They did market research. They did primaries. They did their own research. Then we have secondary sources. Okay, secondary sources, those are the sources that most students, and to be honest with you, most people use nowadays because it's so easy. You can just go online. So secondary sources, you are taking the information that somebody else has already written or researched, and you are using it for your own. So somebody writes a book, okay, about a topic that you're writing about. You go and you read that book, or you read a summary of that book, and you use some of that information in your essay. That's a secondary source, okay? Somebody's already done it for you, and you're just reading it to understand the topic better, and you're citing the source in your own written work, okay? A good researcher will include both primary and secondary sources. Does that mean that you will need to do primary and secondary sources? You should. I understand the situation that we are in, and most of you will do secondary sources. There is a way for you to do primary sources in your case. It can be done because, like I said, with internet, a lot of people are able to do primary sources online. You know, going out there and doing a survey could be just creating a Google form and doing a survey. So yeah, I do expect you to use primary sources. You can get creative with that. All right, so that is how the method of research has changed. Let's keep going. There are many different types of research and sources. However, we're just going to focus on the main types. So we have quantitative and we have qualitative. Look at the first word, quantitative. As you can see from the picture, there's a picture of a graph. Quantitative is coming from the word quantity. Quantity means what? It has to do with numbers. It has to do with empirical research. So when you are giving me quantitative research, you're giving me statistics. You're giving me numbers. So 25% of people do not like chocolate, for example. Okay, that's quantitative. So that means that if that's, whether it's primary or secondary, somebody has gone out and has conducted some kind of survey in order to have, determined that 25% of people do not like chocolate. And it gets very technical. You know, I've also done quantitative research myself. You have to also tell the people, okay, where did you do this research? How many people were surveyed? Because when you say 25% of people, yeah, Have you surveyed over 7 billion people? Have you researched the entire world? You can't say that. You can say that in the context of your study. You have to also tell them about, what you did, your survey. So that's quantitative, okay? Whether you're doing primary or secondary, you still have to say that maybe, for example, the researcher interviewed 700 people in Nablus and 25% of them do not like chocolate, okay? For example. Then we have qualitative research, which a lot of you do qualitative because of your majors. Even for me, as a humanities major, qualitative is very important. When we talk about qualitative, it comes from the word quality, okay? It does not have to do with numbers. It's not numerical, okay? It's thought-based. Qualitative research relates to theories, paradigms, I'm sure you've heard of these words, hopefully, rhetoric, okay, so these are different qualitative research. We also have historical, we have cultural, we have all different types of research for qualitative, okay, so that means I'm not necessarily giving you numbers. I'm giving you the quality, the theory, the rhetoric behind whatever it is I'm researching. So that's very important to remember when you're doing research. If you are more so in the scientific fields, you're going to give a lot of quantitative research, okay? But scientists also have to include qualitative. Now, if you're more the humanities fields, you're going to give more qualitative because that's just the nature of what we do, okay? But you also need to give quantitative. So as you can see, you need to include both, but the quantities will depend, all right? The quantities will depend, but both are very important to include in your research. Even though I would like for you to incorporate both primary and secondary sources in your future assignment, I do understand the limitations that you might have. I am not expecting you to perform at the level of a graduate student or a field expert. What I want you to understand is how to find credible, reliable resources, okay? When it is appropriate to use primary and secondary sources, and then also how to use quantitative and qualitative research, and then how to cite your sources. That's the most important for me. Now, whether you are good at this or not is not really my concern. Can you do it? And to some capacity, to some degree, can you do it? So I do expect you to research your topics and properly cite your sources, okay? At the end of the day, whether you understand or want to use quantitative, qualitative, or whatever you're doing, research and cite your sources, okay? That's the basic thing. So, first, how do you start research? Well, in order for you to research properly and not to become overwhelmed by this subject called research, is to first create research questions. So, for some of you, maybe you'll think to yourself, I have no idea what to write about. I can't write my thesis yet. Well, actually you can, because in your case, you will be given the topic. Now, when it comes to senior project, this might be a little bit different. However, in this case, you are given the topic. You are given the guidelines. So you have to respond to what you are given. So yes, you can write your thesis statement. So you should be able to write your thesis statement first. Once you have your thesis statement, then you create research questions, okay? So let's say my thesis statement is, let me give something kind of controversial. The COVID-19 pandemic is a government conspiracy to overthrow the current world powers. Okay, so the COVID-19 global pandemic is a governmental conspiracy to overthrow the current world powers. Okay, so in that case, I didn't give you my how, and that's okay. I just gave you my what and my why, and that's a very strong opinion that I'm saying right there. I'm not trying to persuade you of anything. This is not persuasive. I'm telling you that, in my opinion, without saying in my opinion, I have said that this is a governmental conspiracy to do what? To overthrow the world, the current world powers. Okay, so now I've got my thesis. Now I have to create my research questions because I have to prove my thesis. I have to, because that is my direct purpose. That is what I need to prove. So from there, I need to create my research questions. If you just type in COVID-19 into the search engine, do you know how much information you're going to get? You're going to get all kinds of crazy information. You're just going to get some information that just gives you the general idea of what COVID-19 is. It does nothing, right? So in this case, for my research question, I want to prove to people it's government conspiracy. So there must be some kind of idea that I have in my mind as to why it's a government conspiracy. So that might be one of my research questions. Maybe I need to give my readers some background on what is a conspiracy, right? So maybe research question 1, what is a conspiracy? Okay. Also, what do I mean by world order? Maybe some people don't understand the current world order, Maybe some people don't understand what that is and who is part of this current world order, right? So I might need to define that for my audience. So maybe my other research question is, what is the definition of world order and who is in charge of the world order? I think most of you understand what I mean by that. So certain countries kind of dominate the world, right? So that's one of them. Okay. Now, that's just the beginning. Now I have to decide what is it that I want to talk about in my essay. So I've told you that COVID-19 is a governmental conspiracy that's meant to overthrow the current world order. What is it now that I need to talk to you about in my body in order to prove that? So now I need to create some topic sentences, and for each topic sentence is a different idea, remember? So for each idea, that's how you get your research questions, okay? Let's just say that my first topic sentence is, the response to COVID-19 in China was so slow and governments were so, this is not a great topic sentence. Governments around the world were too slow to respond to COVID-19, which is suspicious. Okay, go with that. All right. So now I need to give you some evidence of that, right? So now maybe I will create the research question. How do I prove that governments around the world were too slow to react to COVID-19? Now that I know what my research question is, I can research. I might type in some keywords into Google in order to find some news articles, maybe to research the World Health Organization and see what they have statistically to prove my point. And that goes into my next topic, SEO, search engine optimization. That's its own topic by itself. SEO is used by companies and websites in order to get you to click on their website or visit their company page. Like, this is its own topic, its own course, really. It's quite extensive. Now, what does that mean for you? Well, what I just mentioned before, if you just type in a few keywords that are very general, you're not going to get the information you want. So all I want to tell you for SEO is to be very specific with your search. You don't have to type in 1, 2, 3 words into Google. You can type in an entire sentence. I type in entire questions. Actually, I type in my research questions. And I'm going to get more specific information back when I give Google, or whatever search engine you use, when I give it more details. Okay, there's more keywords. Okay, so I'm not going to get into all the technicalities of what you can do, with quotation marks and all that, but whatever, don't worry about that. Just be more specific in your research. Don't just type in COVID-19 and governmental conspiracies. Type in the whole question that you have, the whole research question. Why do some people think that COVID-19 is a governmental conspiracy? And what will happen is that the search engine is going to give you more specific, focused, and possibly more credible options. Now, you'll also notice that when you do any research, the first page and the first few websites that Google or whatever search engine you use gives you are usually the most popular, and they're usually the most credible. And that's for a reason. And that's why a lot of people use Google. If not most people use Google, because they have their algorithms set very well. Okay. I can't say that with other search engines. I've tried them and sometimes I'm just like, nah, I'd prefer Google. Like other search engines like Yahoo or Ecosia is a very nice one, and it's great for the planet, but Google kind of tops it, right? So use those first few, okay? Look at those first few and look at that first page, right? But go beyond that first page as well. You might be missing some great sources. Maybe if you just clicked on the third page, maybe you found something different, okay? So don't just look at the first page. The first page is very important. The first few links on the first page of your Google search are very important and probably the ones that you want to use, but look at the other pages as well, okay? For the third bullet point, I said go beyond the regular Google search engine. Did you know that you can find academic resources on Google? And I'm talking about these are the experts, these are the researchers, these are the professors, PhD candidates that have posted very academic, well-written research. You can just click on the link here, or you can type in scholar.google.com. Again, make sure that your topic is specific and type it in. You're going to get back some great resources. So most universities, they have online libraries that you can find those very academic written works, the books and everything like that. I'm sure Anaja has it. I don't know because Zajal's, in Arabic, so I'm not sure if you have that. But if you don't and you can't get to the library, scholar.google.com is an awesome resource for you to use. Okay, and I think some of you remember in class, a lot of you are English majors and literature and everything like that. So for those of you that need summaries of books really fast, SparkNotes, SparkNotes.com, SparkNotes.com. It's also a great resource for book summaries, and it'll also give you a lot of different information about literary elements. Okay, so to ask you a very pressing question, should you use Wikipedia? Most teachers and professors will tell you no, 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 no. Guess what? It's a yes and no. Okay, this is the yes. If you don't know anything about your topic, nothing. Okay, Wikipedia can help you get a general idea. Okay, and then at the bottom of the Wikipedia article should be some sources. Now, if that writer hasn't put any sources at the bottom of his or her Wikipedia article, don't use it. Okay? Don't even waste your time. Make sure that it has some sources at the bottom. Then click on those sources and look at those sources. If those sources are credible, you can use those sources for your information. So yeah, you can use Wikipedia. Now the no, of course, is to cite the Wikipedia article itself. Even reading the Wikipedia article, you shouldn't do that and write your essay based on that information. What you'll want to do is check the sources of that Wikipedia article and then go from there. Okay, so it's a yes and no. Now, these different, when I say cite the sources, at the bottom of the page, you'll find a section. It could be called references, maybe bibliography, or works cited. Okay, depends on the purpose and the style. Could be MLA style, APA, or whatever. Okay, so you can find it in those different titles. More about that later. Unless you are writing a long paper, and when I say a long paper, I'm talking about not really just graduate level, but 10 pages plus. Okay, you don't need to be using a lot of direct quotes. Maybe one or two is fine. At your level, one. You shouldn't be using too many direct quotes. I think one is pretty good. And we also have long quotes. Like there are some quotes that can be like five lines, 5 lines, 10 lines. That's too much at your level. That's if you're writing extensive papers, right? So your quotes, your direct quotes should be to a minimum. Like I said, for you guys, I think one is good. And they shouldn't be too long. So don't try to think that, let's say I tell you that your essay needs to be at least 600 words and you just stick in that quote to help you with that. No, that's not what you should do. You should paraphrase most of your information. Okay? Direct quotes is like you use them when you really cannot paraphrase that person well. Okay, or the organization. Last bullet point, research also does not mean that you paraphrase everything. Okay, now you're probably thinking, well, what in the world am I supposed to do? Well, you don't paraphrase everything. So that doesn't mean that you look at the book, for example, or you look at the article, you read the first paragraph, and then you go straight to your essay and you paraphrase it. That is not what research is. You read the information and you understand it. And then once you understand the information, that helps you to be able to write an essay to answer your question, to answer your thesis. Then later on, or as you're writing, you can also include the research within the essay. So let's say you're writing that paragraph about government's too slow to respond to COVID-19, so it's suspicious. Okay, you've read all the articles about this topic, so you should be able to talk about that in your paragraph. Then you need to include some research. So once you've written that paragraph, now you can go back and maybe you can paraphrase what a specific source said. Maybe you can put in a quote if you really feel that it's necessary. That is how you include your research into your essay. You should do it paragraph by paragraph. And some people will do it differently. That's on you, as long as it's included. Okay, so you must read and understand the topic before developing your thesis as well. Okay, so in the case, because I've already said this, that you should be able to write your thesis and then your research questions. In the case that you don't understand the topic at all, then that's when you read about it and then you develop your thesis. That's in the case that, that's a really difficult topic that you've probably been given by your professor. Let's say it's something about literature. You've read the book and then your professor has given you a topic that you don't know. you really don't know. It's so complicated that you might have to even reread the book. Okay, there are times where you'll have that situation. So what do you do? Well, then you have to do that. You have to do your research and maybe reread the book before you can even write your thesis in that situation. With my topic, or topics, I should say, you really shouldn't have to do that. The topics that I give you are general enough that most people have some sort of opinion, I would hope. So if you have any sort of mind that you have opinions on topics, you should be able to create your thesis without any problem. And that's what's fun about argumentative essays, is that if you have any type of opinion, you should be able to quickly respond to it, and then you're just doing your research afterwards to prove your point. Hopefully all of that made sense. Those are just the different norms of research that you should keep in mind. So now you have conducted your research. You probably have all of your notes ready to go. So now what should you do and what should you expect? For our course, we are going to focus on Mla Format. Mla stands for Modern Language Association. Again, Modern Language Association. So this is an actual organization, and they have existed for many years, and they have a format. Most humanities majors follow Mla Format. Okay, so this is the format that we will focus on and be using for this course, just to make things easier. Also, we just don't have the time to talk about all the different formats. We might look at them, but we don't have time to do them all, okay? Later on, if a professor says he wants you to use, or she wants you to use a different format, then you can look that up easily. As long as you have the foundation for what I'm talking about, it's not that hard. Okay, so we're using Mla Format. So keep that in mind when I'm talking about citations and works cited page and so on and so forth. So internal citations are used within the essay itself. So when you directly paraphrase information from an outside source, you cannot claim that as your own because you did not do that research. Okay, you did not say that. So at the end of the sentence, or the sentences that you paraphrase that information, in parentheses, as you can see from the example, you put the last name of the author, and if there is a page number, you put the page number. Again, research has changed. Most sources are online now. So let's say you're using an article that does not have page numbers, then you would put the last name of the author. Let's say you have an article that does not have an author and does not have a page number. In parentheses, you're going to put the title of that article, okay, in quotation marks, or obviously in quotation marks. So let's say there's an article titled The COVID-19 Crisis, parentheses, quotation mark, the COVID-19 crisis, quotation mark, parentheses. Okay, so that's how you would write it. If you're confused, don't worry, there'll be more information about internal citations. So if you paraphrase everything in your essay, that means that every sentence would have to, or every paragraph would have to, at the end, have an internal citation at the end. That means that you paraphrased everything. That's not realistic. So only when you are directly paraphrasing information from an outside source that is clearly not your own, words or not your own research, your own idea, pretty much. At the end of that sentence or those sentences, you should put the internal citation, which is on the screen there as an example. If you put an internal citation at the end of the paragraph, that does not necessarily mean that the entire paragraph has been paraphrased. It could mean that maybe just that last sentence was paraphrased, so that's fine. Also, you use internal citations when you use direct quotes. Always, especially if you use direct quotes. So that means that you are taking the exact words from your outside source and you are copying and pasting that quote into your essay. It is plagiarism if you take the words without putting them in quotation marks and without an internal citation. It is not plagiarism if you cite the source correctly. So if I am copying a sentence from a book and putting it into my essay, I have to take that sentence and put it into quotation marks. Then at the end of that sentence with quotation marks, I put an internal citation, like the one that you see on the screen, Murray 23. And that's how I would use internal citations for direct quotes and then paraphrase. We also call those indirect quotes, okay? The works cited page can have different names as well. It could have references, it could have bibliography. They're different and depends on the style. For Mla format, we typically use works cited or bibliography. References is usually like for APA and other styles, but works cited and bibliography. Works cited means that everything on that page you have cited internally. Okay, so let's say you have 5 resources. So you have taken all 5 resources and you have internally cited them within your essay. We say works cited page. Okay, let's say that you have 5 sources plus you watch 2 documentaries on YouTube. Okay, and that helped you develop your ideas for that essay. We call that a bibliography. That's an example. So that means that everything that's cited in your essay is mentioned in the bibliography, but there are some sources that you cannot cite because you either watched the documentary or you read the book and it just helped you with your ideas. You didn't paraphrase anything. You didn't quote anything. Then we use a bibliography. Okay, so bibliography is more general. It depends on you. Okay, I'm not going to tell you you have to do works cited, you have to do bibliography. Okay, you can do either one. As a writer, that is your choice. Just so that you know that you have to do one of them. You have to do a works cited page or a bibliography. It is the very last page of your essay. The last page, always. Not the last paragraph, the last page. Okay, on that page, you will have your sources in a very specific format. That format that we are using is Mla format. And it lists all of your sources alphabetically. Okay, so there's many sources out there for you to figure out how to put everything in Mla format and what exactly does it look like. Okay, because every type of written work has a different format. So a book, a physical hard copy book, that format will look differently. An electronic book will look differently. A periodical will look differently. So it's a little bit complex, but once you figure it out, it's not as bad as you think. And you guys are lucky. You guys have websites that you can just type in the information and it will do the format for you. Also, Word document, which I'll show you in the future lesson, also has a function that you can use, not Google Docs, Word document. A function that you can use, you can type in the information and it'll do the format for you. Actually, it'll insert everything for you. It's awesome. when I was doing research in college, we didn't have that, or in high school and part of college, we didn't have that privilege. We had to study a manual and we had to figure it out. We had to look at the manual every time and do it ourselves. So lucky. You can go to this website and you can look at some of the information that I'm talking about. I highly recommend that you follow that website and look at exactly what it is I'm talking about. But on the next slide, you will also find some examples of, not internal citations, but you'll find some examples of works cited. This is an example of a typical MLA citation, and this citation would be on the last page. Whether it's called works cited or bibliography, it does not matter. This is on the last page. This is a typical MLA citation. It's not internal. This is just a typical MLA citation. As you can see, everything is double-spaced, just like your essay would be. It's double-spaced. The first line is at a regular margin, and then everything else that comes after is indented by ½ inch, or you can do 5 spaces. Okay, indent or 5 spaces. Why is that? It's because it looks it looks nice, but it's also to make it easy for the reader, because if everything is double spaced, then I don't know where your citation starts or stops. So this is MLA format. You have to indent the second, third, fourth, fifth lines. Okay. Also, what you can see at the beginning is this is a great example because we have 2 authors. Sometimes you might have some work that has maybe 3, 4, 5 authors. So what we typically do is, if there is or are authors' names, then what we do is we take the first author listed and we use the last name first. So in this case, his actual name would be James Bartolotti. Okay, however, we're going to take his last name and put it first. So Bartolotti, comma, James. That tells me that his last name is coming first. That's why the comma is there. Now, that extra comma is a style thing. You don't have to put that comma there beforehand. Then the second author here has her first name first and last name. That is the format if we can find the author. If I have 3 or 4 different authors, then I would use the commas. I would list them. Like, for example, Bartolotti, James, comma, Viorica, Marianne, comma, Sean Fitzgerald, and Natalie Murray. Okay, that's the style. Now you will notice that the next line has the title of the article or chapter or whatever in quotation marks. Then you will notice that the next part has the book name in italics, the slanted text. Because what we do is we put a whole work, like a book or a magazine, we put it in italics. That tells the reader that that is the name of the big work. That's the name of the book or the magazine or whatever, okay, or the newspaper. And the title within that book is Bilinguals Existing Languages Benefit Vocabulary Learning in a Third Language. Okay, and that's put in quotation marks because it's the small part of the book. It's a chapter or a section, okay, or an article within the newspaper, for example. Then we have a bunch of other aspects of a citation. We have the volume, we have the number, and this all depends on what you're using. And as you can see, this is an online source. So this person used a particular library and also provided us with the link. If this was a hard copy source, like what I used to use, there would be no link because we didn't have internet. It would be just the book itself. It would stop at where it says like 110 to 140. But now that you have electronic sources, you actually have to put all of that information plus the site link so that your professor or whoever it is reading your essay can find this information, okay? Either because they want to, they're doing their own research, or to fact check you. I'm going to try to be as concise as possible for those of you who are already feeling a bit overwhelmed. This is the Works Cited page for Mla Format. I have already introduced you to the standard essay format for academic papers. This is specifically for Mla Format. If you can replicate everything from Mla Format, that would be the best. If you cannot, that's okay. And now what I'm saying for that is what you see in the top right corner, that is the writer's name plus the page number. If you remember to do that, that is great. That's what I prefer. But if you cannot, I am not going to make a big deal out of it. But what you have to do is a proper Works Cited page. So where you see everything underneath the title Works Cited, yes, you have to do that. So you will be required to have a certain amount of sources for your argumentative essay. So you will have to, like for example, I might have you do at least 3 or 4 minimum. You can do more if you'd like. So that means you have to list them according to Mla Format. As you can see here, this is done properly. The citations are properly spaced, double spaced. If the individual citation has more than one line, the second, third, fourth, whatever line is indented, okay, or 5 spaces. All the margins are 1 inch. Everything is Times New Roman 12-point font size. It's looking great. And this is also the last page of your essay, the very last page, okay? So this is what you will have to replicate. Now, will you be allowed to have borders? No, this is just a sample, and they just want to show you the margins. You are not allowed to have borders on any page of your document. So this is a typical Works Cited page for Mla Format. Just very briefly, I want to introduce you to a different type of bibliography. We call this the Annotated Bibliography. So annotated in English, I'm sure you've probably heard me say this word before, is when we add notes pretty much. So if I were to give you a document and I asked you to write notes on it, you will annotate it. So annotated bibliography, you are basically explaining to your reader why, or let me stop, what this source is and why you chose it. So in this case, we have the same format. We have the header, again, on the left side with the writer's name. We have a title, and you will see that the format of the citation is the same, but underneath each citation, there is an indented paragraph, and that is the annotation itself. So on this document, the first one starts with Adams, that's the annotation. The second one starts with according to, that's the second annotation. Why do we use annotated bibliographies? A lot of times this may be required before you submit your essay. The professor wants to see your research before, and sometimes, you know, for more complicated works, maybe your professor will ask you for an annotated bibliography just because. So I'm just introducing you to what this is, so that maybe in the future, if you are asked to do an annotated bibliography, you have some idea of what to expect. I am not, let me repeat before I get panic messages, I am not asking you to write an Mla annotated bibliography. Okay, you only need to do the standard one that I just showed you on the previous slide. You do not have to do an annotated bibliography, but I do want to make you aware that it exists. And if you are asked to do one, this is the format that it is. It's basically you explaining what the source is and why you chose it. And everybody's annotated bibliography will be different, but that's the basis of it, what it is and what is its purpose in your essay. That completes our lesson for week 11. So we started the research methods unit. Just want to let you know that there will be an assignment coming up. And after you view both lessons, this one you've already done, and then the next one, which is a tutorial, then I will post an assignment in which you will practice. So you're going to go back to your cause and effect outline, and you're going to research at least 2 sources that you would use in order to prove your point for your essay. And then you have to put those in proper Mla format according to what you learned. Okay, this is going to require some self-study and some self-learning, because I'm not going to go over every single type of citation format, because it's just going to be confusing for you. I'll give you the resources, but you'll have to do the work. And this is just so, not to punish you, but just to make sure that you understand what the lesson is and how to do it for the future. So like I mentioned, the second lesson will be posted next week. It will be a tutorial. So I'm going to take you through a hypothetical situation in which I'm doing research, so you can see actually everything that I'm talking about. Make sure you view the lessons and write down your questions before the next Zoom session, which is going to be on Thursday, April 9th. We have 2 sessions, 4:30 and 5:30. Both of them are 45 minutes only. So make sure you have your questions. You can join both if you really want to. I don't want all 101 students in one, because that will be overwhelming for everyone if people are asking a lot of questions. Now, that's the meeting ID. Okay, just like before, you can join without a password. You can also call in for those of you that don't have internet access or something's wrong with your computer. You can call in. Just like last time, I will post the same instructions for how you can call in if you cannot use your computer. And that's pretty much it. So today we went over what is research and why do we do it, and some guidelines to do your own research, very, very basic. And then also talking about citation style, and how to do those different citations. In the next lesson, it will be a tutorial. It will not be a recorded PowerPoint. I'm actually going to record my desktop and show you how I would start research if I were a student. So hopefully that recorded lesson will help you to really understand what's going on. And then the next lesson will be a little bit more about maybe some resources and maybe some other methodologies that you can follow. All right, so I hope you have a wonderful day or evening, and I will virtually see you in the next lesson.